Welcome to a mountainous new episode of the Demonic Compendium, the show where I discuss the mythology, design, and game history of your favorite Megami Tensei demons. It's a brand new year, and I think we all owe the Earth itself just a little bit more gratitude. So I'm gonna kick this year off right by praying to these special spirits. And I hope you'll all join me because today, we're talking about Sudama. Sudama, not to be confused with Kodama, that's an entirely separate possible future episode, are mountain spirits in Japanese folklore. They're based quite heavily on the Shinto belief that everything has its own soul, and in this case, Sudama are most commonly born from the energies of rocks and rivers in mountainous regions of the world. While they're nearly always portrayed as harmless mountain spirits that never really pull tricks and merely watch humans from afar to keep an eye on their homeland, or at most occasionally warn them to be careful, that wasn't always the case. Like many other creatures in Japanese folklore, the origins actually seem to go back to Chinese mythology, specifically with a term known as Qimi Wangliang. The characters that make up Qimi were often used for monsters of the mountains, and Wangliang referred to monsters from the river. Eventually, the two were juxtaposed into a singular phrase that essentially meant monsters of the mountains and rivers, which basically describes Sudama perfectly. In Japanese, the same term is known as Chimimoryo, and the first kanji in Chimi is actually the kanji used for Sudama itself. In early texts from the Heian period, Sudama was portrayed a bit more accurately to the Chinese side of things, and Sudama was described as something more similar to an oni. But years later, in scripture from the Edo period, Sudama became the harmless wilderness dwellers we've come to know and love them as. Sudama's Compendium entry from Persona 5 refers to them as a spirit of rivers and mountains in Japanese lore. They dwell in ancient trees and ageless rocks. They are not evil and will often appear as humans or supernatural wonders to warn people. Design-wise, the very first depiction of Sudama from Kaneko was seen in Shin Megami Tensei 2, and it was definitely a much more literal take on their idea. The original iteration portrayed them as spirits coming out of a mountain, with obvious ties to religion and spirituality, seen on the rock in the forms of the Tomoe symbol representing harmony and balance, and the Shide ornaments often used at shrines as a form of blessing. This is actually a really cool design that I'm hoping we will eventually see again someday. If Sudama were actually in D2, they aren't at the time of making this video, I wouldn't be surprised to see this design get a 3D model through the Dimensional Demon thing that they've been doing. But the main design that most fans are familiar with is definitely this round, happy little fellow. I am a huge fan of simplicity in design, and this is an absolutely fantastic one. It's amazing how much character and personality Kaneko was able to create in what essentially looks like a yokai version of a Mr. Men character. This design might resemble Kodama, but actually did come quite a bit earlier, and Kaneko said that his main inspiration for this was unicellular creatures as well as water fleas or Daphnia, which are really gross looking, not nearly as cute as Sudama. But it's not too hard to see how the flailing limbs of the Daphnia coming from that rounded body could have influenced Sudama's design. As far as game history goes, Sudama typically does what it does best and stays away from people. Despite its familial resemblance to Kodama, Sudama does not have any sort of unique conversation with it in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. And despite their heavy connection to nature and Japanese folklore, they don't even appear in the Raido games, which seems especially surprising given King Abaddon's setting. So what is there for me to really discuss about Sudama if they don't show their lack of faces very often? Well, for one, these nature spirits enjoy the comforts of the castle area in the Metroidvania spin-off Shin Megami Tensei Synchronicity Prologue, and we all know I'm always just happy to discuss any demon that appears in that game. Their largest role to date, however, is in Persona 5, where shadow versions of Sudama are known as noisy mountain spirits, which actually seems a little odd to me, since I never really found any texts or sources indicating that they're known for being loud. But no, Sudama's largest role in that title is during the boss fight against the Velvet Room twins Caroline and Justine, where keeping true to most of their other personas, they use noticeably smaller and weaker figures in their attacks, in Sudama's case allowing Justine to use Garu skills. And so there you have it, Sudama, the meandering miniature monster maintaining mountain morality. Did I leave out something you thought was important? Was I just plain wrong about something? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know who you'd like to see me talk about in future episodes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Demonic Compendium, and I'll see you next time. But be careful while you rest that a demon doesn't take over your body.